Dear Prime Minister, what if you saw a crime being committed? The most atrocious, barbaric violence that human beings could inflict on another person. And you knew it was a crime because you'd seen it before, but ignored it. This time, you'd do something, wouldn't you? In 1994, such a crime was committed in broad daylight. The world ignored it. Again. We'd like to tell you what happened.
This is the story of one man, woman or child being murdered, and another. And another. Until 1 million lay dead, just because they didn't fit in. This is the story of a genocide that the world stood by and let happen. This is a story that few people know about, and yet they must. They said that this story was one that could never happen, and yet it did. This is the story of 100 days. 100 days that occurred in 1994 in a place called Rwanda. Rwanda, a land of beautiful hills, a green oasis in the middle of Africa.
Rwanda has a complex history, just like any other country.
To put it simply, Rwanda was traditionally ruled by a king and a group of chiefs. Those who ruled were called Tutsis, and those who were governed were called Hutu. But people could move between the two groups. They lived side by side, and Tutsis and Hutus often married each other.
After the First World War, Belgium ruled Rwanda. They believed that Tutsis and Hutus were from different races and thought, just like the Nazis, that some races were better than others. They introduced ID cards which labelled people as Tutsi or Hutu forever. This distorted things in Rwanda and caused tension.
After the Belgians left in 1959, the group classed as Hutus took control. Their leaders, called Kayibanda and then Habyarimana, began to discriminate against the Tutsi and incite Hutus to hate them. They used similar tactics to those used by Hitler against Jewish people.
Many Tutsis left Rwanda and formed a rebel army called the RPF, who fought against the Hutu government. After a struggle, it looked like there'd be peace. The two sides agreed a deal in 1993 that would see them share power.
However, loathing of the peace deal and of the Tutsis grew among some extremist Hutus. They used radio stations and newspapers to spread the racist hatred of those they called cockroaches, vermin. They made plans for the extermination of the Tutsi. They trained and organized groups of killers called the Interahamwe and gave them lists of those to be murdered. On April the 6th, 1994, the president of Rwanda was killed when his plane was shot down by a missile. It was a signal that the killing squads, the Interahamwe, were waiting for.
And then the night that the plane came down and the genocide started, the town was quiet. I was at dinner with friends, and then we heard this booming sound. And we went rushing into the garden to see what it was, and we could see a glow on the horizon. Didn't know what it was. And then after a while, we began to feel very uneasy, and I drove home, and as I got into the house, my phone was ringing, and it was a friend from the BBC ringing to say that that had been the president's plane coming down, the plane with the presidents of both Rwanda and Burundi. So I thought I'd better start reporting. So I began to ring people I know, and I rang a local journalist and I said, I'm going to go to the airport to see what's going on, because that's what a journalist always does, that's your instinct, to go out and see what's happening. And he said, don't go, stay where you are, there's roadblocks. Killing started.
Soldiers and Interahamwe soon began using the prepared lists to find and murder Tutsis and any Hutu who disagreed with their ideas of extermination. Roadblocks were set up to stop any Tutsi escaping. Identity cards were checked, and ordinary Hutus hunted down their Tutsi neighbors. Men, women, and children were killed. Hundreds of thousands of rapes were committed day after day, all around the country, as the killing spread.
They came and surrounded the whole compound so that nobody would be escaping. So when I saw that, I just climbed that tree. It was one big avocado tree in the backyard. So I stayed there. because they couldn't just really think maybe somebody could run, they didn't see anyone jumping the fence, they just went inside the house and killed everyone who was there. Obviously, because that tree was just a couple of meters away from the house, I could hear all what was happening. And when they finished killing them, what they did, they just pulled the body outside, and I remember trying to really close my eyes. It was even closed before because I was terrified. I was closing my eyes, holding the tree very firmly so I would not fall. Then when they started pulling the body out, I couldn't, somehow I opened my eyes to see. And a couple of seconds, some of them, they were still moving. And when they left, I couldn't even get down because I was still afraid. Even if they're moving, I didn't do nothing.
Afterwards, the world would claim that they didn't know what was happening in Rwanda, that there was no warning. But 2 months before the killing began, an informant told the United Nations commander that a genocide was planned. The commander, General Dallaire, sent a message to his superiors and asked for permission to seize the weapons. He was told to do nothing. Later, the world refused to intervene. The UN withdrew most of its troops, and documents show that the USA shied away from using the word genocide in case it meant that they had to do something. The world turned its back on Rwanda.
This town of Graves is now under the control of the Tutsi rebel army, guarding the hospital where those who survived are treated. A Belgian professor witnessed the savagery.
They were cut here. They cut also some fingers, not the whole hand, some fingers, just to destroy the people.
To see those children like that, and to see the sheer scale of the killing of children, I found that very difficult to live with. And I guess I would think for 6 months, maybe more, maybe a year, 2 years, I found it really difficult. And I said to myself then, I'll probably never cover a story that is so upsetting. And I've covered a lot of terrible natural disasters and wars and catastrophes since then, but nothing has come anywhere near, nothing has come close to anything that I witnessed or saw.
After 100 days, the rebel Tutsi army drove the extremist government out of Rwanda. Some of the perpetrators of the genocide have been brought to justice. Others are being tried even today. And thousands more still live side by side with those they hunted 20 years ago.
I think it's really important that people should know what happened in Rwanda. There is no hope of preventing or stopping genocide, mass killing, these kind of tragedies and disasters if we don't learn the lessons of history. That's why it's really important that there should be journalists, there should be eyewitnesses there should be people on the ground who try and help at the time, and that there should be people who think about it afterwards, people like you, who think through what happened, why it happened, and try and spread the word, because that's the only hope we have for preventing this kind of thing in the future.
After the Holocaust, the world's leaders said, "Never again." They forgot that in 1994. Please don't let them forget again. Please remember Rwanda.
This is the story of a genocide. It doesn't have a happy ending. You now know about it. If you remember it, maybe it won't be repeated. Remember Rwanda.